Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from beautiful Salem. And tonight I wanted to continue our discussion of structure, and I thought that I would throw into our discussion the subject of definition. It was recently brought up on the Pagans Tonight show, the idea that to define something limits it. And you know, this is certainly true, but not to define something makes it extremely hard to deal with. In our community, we have a tremendous issue around the issue of definition, and a tremendous destructive, self-defeating issue. A lot of our people seem to want to define themselves into very tiny and utterly irrelevant groups. Just as we ought to be coming together under the largest umbrella terms possible in order to promote ourselves in society and achieve the goals we claim we want, we instead are trying to subdivide ourselves farther and farther and farther. And you know, it should go without saying, because you can look all around the world, the smaller your group is, the less it counts. And that may not be what a lot of people want to hear, but it is the absolute truth. So today we have people defining themselves as everything from pagans to heathens to neo-pagans to demi-pagans to earth spiritualists, every one of which is smaller than all of them would be together, many of which are crippled by their very smallness. Then, of course, we have the huge fight over who is and is not Wiccan. What should be the largest and most influential of all the groups, and in fact is nonetheless absolutely crippled and hobbled by its inability to stand together, because they'd rather fight over labels. It is extremely important, if we're going to achieve the goals we claim we want, which are legal and social equality, civil rights, etc., that we manage to stand together and stop trying to subdivide ourselves into smaller and more powerless groups. I can tell you right now that the demi-pagans have a long way to go even to be on the map, because I think there are only 5 of them. Some of the other groups are a little better off, but you know, when we come to legal precedent, most of these different terms have absolutely no standing whatsoever. And they kind of need to wake up and realize that. Or it's going to surprise them one day. Because you don't just get to call yourself anything you want and claim the precedence of other groups. Occasionally you could pull it off, but it doesn't necessarily follow. And so all this playing with definition is potentially extremely dangerous to all the groups that are doing it, if they would just stop and think about it a little bit. And we really would be a lot better off if we weren't playing these games. Now, let me add to that another thing that's happening now. I have been a Wiccan priest of the Correllian tradition since 1976. And there has never been a time in all those years that I have ever thought of Wicca as anything but a religion, and a religion seeking social equality. Not for a moment did I ever think of it as anything else. Now I'm hearing people, now that we've almost achieved social equality and legal equality, now I'm hearing people who are trying to say, oh no, Wicca's not a religion, it's a fertility cult. Oh no, Wicca's not a religion, it's a grimoire tradition. Now what the hell is a grimoire tradition? I'll tell you what it is. Legally, it's nothing. And you know, when people like Selena Fox and Pete Pathfinder Davis, Phyllis Corot, and I would include myself, although at a smaller level, have spent our lives fighting for legal standing and social equality, to have our own people undermine it that way, I find personally rather scandalous. I am extremely unimpressed that such a thing should be happening in any quarter of the Wiccan community. Because I know that it's only a matter of time before the conservative Christians who don't want to recognize Wicca as a religion bring these people up? And how do we answer them? How would you answer them? If they were to say to you, oh, but Wicca isn't really a religion because we read on this website that it's a grimoire tradition. It's not an easy thing to answer, because it is true, they did read it there, coming from some of our own people, or at least supposedly our own people. Because personally, I would question whether they really are part of our community if they're defining it that way, or at least if I care to recognize them as such. Some years ago, when we took witch school from Chicago to Hoopeston, we found ourselves in an extremely tense confrontation with a number of conservative Christians who had been bussed in for the occasion and tried to take over a city council meeting. And one of the things that happened that night is that we tried to explain what Wicca and witchcraft were. And one of the things we tried to explain is that magic is a tool of self-empowerment. It's not something that you're supposed to use against people or to force your will on them. And the subject was brought up of the classic example, the love spell, that you wouldn't do on a particular person, but rather to attract the ideal love into your life. And what do you think happened? Some of those conservative Christians responded, oh no, that's not true. We know it's not true because we've seen your websites online, and they have love spells directed at individual people. And I have to tell you, I was speechless, because I knew they had really seen just such sites, because I've seen them myself. I do not approve of them. It's not what our religion teaches. It's not appropriate. But there's absolutely no question that they had seen such sites, and how are they supposed to know the difference? So as we're all playing with these words, we really need to stop and think how the rest of the world is looking at it. And, you know, if you really want to achieve this standing in society, if you really want all these legal rights, you have to consider the ramifications of your behavior. Playing around with these words is a very dangerous thing, because they have legal meanings in some cases, and they're tied to legal precedents in some cases. And it's not just a matter of playing on the weekend. And you know, when people go around trying to undercut the idea that Wicca or any of these traditions is a religion, this is going to be picked up eventually by others. And I think that we as a community first need to embrace kinship between each other, and second, we really need to shut down the idea that we are anything but a religion. I personally, as I say, in all these years, I've never heard anyone until the last 2 years use these definitions. And I really think it's a very destructive thing. So that's my meditation on structure for tonight. And we'll continue our conversation tomorrow night. And in the meantime, I am Reverend Don Lewis, Wiccan priest of the Wiccan religion, not the Wiccan fertility cult, and not the Wiccan grimoire tradition, because it is neither. It is a religion. And until next time, I wish you blessed be.